Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Ajax Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021. This meeting is being held electronically and live streamed on the internet. All staff and committee members are participating by phone or video. All regular practices and procedures of the committee continue to apply during these electronic meetings. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they resolve. Thank you for your patience. We will now proceed with the meeting. First off, are there any conflicts of interest from the committee members with any items to be discussed this evening? I do not see any. Thank you. And now if we can look for someone to motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting dated May 5th. I think that's supposed to say March 5th, 2021. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Jeff, thank you. Second? Am I not seeing everyone on here? Okay, Beverly seconds. All right, all in favor? Perfect, motion is carried. So we're now gonna move on to item number 4 on your agenda for tonight, which is a presentation and discussion of items. There are 2 items to discussion tonight, and I'm gonna turn the floor over to Mrs. Sawchuk to take care of those.
Thank you, Anderson, and good evening, everyone. So the 2 items that we have on tonight's agenda are both repeat items in the sense of these are items that have come before the committee in the past, and tonight I'll just be bringing updates on those. So the first one is for the heritage permit application for 762 Roslyn Road East, which is the O'Connor Farm. So again, because this has come to the committee before, I think we're all familiar with this property. This is the sort of residential section of the O'Connor Farm, which is located at the intersection of Roslyn Road and Lakeridge Road. The house itself is designated under Section 29 of the Heritage Act. So it's a Part 4 designation, an individual designation, and it's an 1840s Georgian style stone home. So back in November, when this first came to the committee actually made a motion based on the presentation at that time. And that motion was that staff continue to work with the applicant to address existing concerns and report back to the committee upon making a decision on the matter or escalating the item to council. So the idea was, because we were feeling a bit of pressure in terms of meeting the timelines from the applicants, I presented the major issues to the committee in November. And then I would continue working with them until we got to the point where we could move forward with an approval. If there were any items that they didn't address that we had discussed as a committee, and we weren't in a position to approve the application, then it would have gone on to council for a final decision. In the end, this project sort of fell off the radar for a little while. And I believe the applicants were just on to other things. I see a question from Councillor Khan.
Respectfully, Mr. Sawchuk, I was not on this committee in November. If I would, I'm really intrigued to know what's going on. Can you summarize it, exactly what we're looking at, please?
Sure, absolutely.
I apologize, everyone, but I really am interested. I would like to know.
Sure. So you'll get a sense as I move on through the presentation. There'll be lots of images, so you'll have an understanding on what's going on. But essentially, this house has been in the same family for, I guess, close to 100 or over 180 years now. And the sort of new generation in this household has somewhat outgrown the house. So they're looking at ways of renovating so that they can create more space and protect the heritage elements of the building itself, but also add some new space and some new elements to the building. So our job as a heritage committee is to look at those proposed renovations and say, okay, what's reasonable in terms of protecting its value, and what are the things that, there might be other ways to achieve where it could have some issues in terms of negative consequences for the heritage value. So I'll give a bit of a summary as I work through as well about the major issues that we had faced. So just as of this morning, actually, I received these color renderings of the project. So most of us will be familiar with the sort of general layout of the additions that are being proposed, but none of us, including myself until today, had seen the color. Now keep in mind that these renderings aren't very accurate. It's just sort of giving you a general depiction of the sort of motif or the color palettes that will be used. And with the next slide, I'll provide some reference points. But it's important to keep in mind that especially the stone portion of the building really doesn't look like this. This is just what's created in an architectural program. This is a field stone house, as we saw in an earlier slide, where there's actually a variety of colors. You have pink stones, you have light gray stones, you have charcoal stones, you have orange stones. Pretty much anything that was found on the property, I assume, would have made its way into that house. So in terms of the design motif, I believe it was influenced by this project, which is, some of you may recognize the person on the right there. That's Kate Campbell, who's an HGTV personality, and recently undertook a project restoring an old stone house. And that's what you see on the left there. And in that case, she used a very similar color palette. So very similar style, fieldstone house, and using this sort of dark composite material, or I believe in this case, it may have been like a hardy board material. But the darker color can actually work quite well with some of the darker grays and the charcoals that you see in the stones. So in terms of the concerns that we had last time around, I've got a list of them here. The ones with the strike throughs are the issues that I think we've already settled based on a presentation I gave back in December. So there was some concern about the orientation of the additions because this is quite different. Historically, there had been additions on this property, but they always moved backwards. Now there's a pool back there, and the homeowners were actually somewhat forced to create this new scenario where you have sort of an east wing and a west wing. And also because of the location of the driveway and that sort of thing, that's what would make sense to accommodate the garage that they have planned here, which is currently, I believe, a detached garage. There was also concerns about the precedence for the porch design they were proposing. And when we went back and looked through the records, we couldn't find any evidence of the style of porch on there currently actually being historic. There was obviously an attempt made at keeping that historic character, and I think that was achieved with the old porch, but the new porch does the same. It's not quite as ornate, but its simplicity actually could be seen to add to the value of this property because it lets the stone really shine through. The issue of roofing was one that was still out there because the applicants had not arrived at a stage where they were willing to consider cedar or a replica cedar product. So that's something we'll discuss tonight. The addition of vinyl soffits turned out not really to be a major issue because all of the existing soffits are vinyl. So it's not like we're, or the applicants removing historic material in favor for something more modern. We also looked at the style of brick on the new chimney, and that is going to be a sort of heritage looking brick that matches what was originally found on this property. And then the last three issues, the replacement of the front door, the replacement of the windows, and the demolition of the interior stone walls, we didn't have enough information at the time to consider. So all that information has arrived in my email as of last week, which was sort of good timing for us, considering it before the committee takes a break for the summer recess. So starting with the cedar shingles, this was a visual that I included back in the November presentation. And what it was meant to demonstrate is the area that we wanted to see cedar on. And essentially, we wanted it to be on all of the historic elements of the house because especially as viewed from the front, the roof is quite prominent on this building, and this cedar shingles really do add to the character. So if not authentic cedar, we were willing to consider EnviroShake or another replica product, as we have with other designated properties like St. George's Anglican Church and the West Glen property. As of last week, we found out that the owner is open to using EnviroShake and has now included that as part of the plan. And we were only concerned with the historic elements of the building. Just for design reasons, they decided that essentially the whole central portion of the building is going to be done in EnviroShake, with the exception of this light colored area here that you see on both sides, which will just be a roofing membrane. And that's because it's essentially a flat roof in that one location. And then they will have I believe it's a standing seam steel roof on the garage, and then the master bedroom additions out here, as well as sort of accenting that with a shed style dormer towards the back of the property, which won't be visible from any public areas anyway. The next issue that we couldn't come to any consensus on was the front door. At the time, we hadn't been provided with any drawings. This is what is there now. And it's a really interesting door because I don't believe it's original, but it does generally follow the style that you would find for a Georgian door, with the exception of these windows here. And what I assume just happened was they wanted more light in this area. So at some point or another, they took the door down, they disassembled it, they actually cut out the panels here and added this in. So it's like a strange mix of keeping that Georgian motif. At the same time, this has been heavily altered. So it's not like there's an authentic door there that's kind of worth preserving. And that plays to the favor of the applicants because they had no interest in keeping this door. So what they came back with recently was a wood style door, which is good. That's what we would be going for. But it had this large glass section with these fake muntins through the middle, which aren't very favorable in terms of maintaining heritage character for a building. So I went back to them with a more authentic Georgian style door, very simple, just a slab wooden door with the what's known as the cross and Bible design, because it looks to have a cross up here and then an open Bible down there. So that was just sort of the slang term for this style of door. They did not like that because they said that area of the house is really dark and they want to do whatever they can to keep some light coming in through there. So what we settled on, and this is not the best image, this door is obviously quite beaten up. So the final door will not look like this, but it will look like this in terms of its general design. This was just the only really applicable one I could find when I did a Google search. It happened to be at a salvage shop. So it will be like this in the sense of it will be, for lack of a better term, raw kind of exposed grain wood, but the style will be in a general Georgian theme with a larger opening for windows and divided lights up in the upper section. So I think it's a good sort of middle ground approach. In my opinion, it's far better than this, which is just an altered door that doesn't really look the part. You never would have seen anything like this. You did actually see doors like this. Usually with an 1840s building, this was a little too technologically advanced for them. So they wouldn't have had this back in the 1840s, but it wouldn't have been a stretch by any means to imagine a door like this through the later 19th century on a Georgian style building. The next issue we had to tackle was the windows. And when I went out to the site, I was actually somewhat surprised to see the windows that were in there. I had only seen the building from the street in the past, and I assumed that these were authentic wood windows, which they clearly are not when you get closer. And these are actually vinyl windows with a fake grill or muntin in the actual wedged in between two panes of glass. So it looks great from a distance. When you get a little closer, you know, not sort of a top-notch replica window. At the same time, this house is positioned well back from the street, so it's not something that you'd easily be able to pick out from a distance. However, with a little encouragement from us, they have been open to considering wood windows. And so this is an Andersen product, very modern product that is made of wood, so has the structure of a wood window, but it's also coated with a composite material, so it gets the durability of a newer product. So I'd say it's a perfect sort of blend of the two. With these windows, there are all kinds of features that you can opt into. One of them is to have the grills on the outside of the window. What that does is that obviously gives it a much more authentic look. So that's something they're willing to do, which I think will be quite good and will be quite an improvement from what they have in there now. There are also a few windows on the house that are currently fixed. They're not operable at all. And those will be changed out for double hung windows. So again, bringing it back to what would have been more authentic to a building of its age. The windows will be black, which is a bit of a divergence from what's there now with the white windows. And these were a couple of reference points for us to look at just to understand how that matches with the character of the building. So obviously, this is a similar material house in the fieldstone. You can see I don't know if these are black or a dark charcoal, but they do look appropriate for the property. This was taken off of the Andersen website. This is actually the product that will be installed. In the case of this building, there will be the divided lights on both the upper and lower sashes, and they will take the form that's there currently. So for example, on the front window, it's 8/12s. Those will be retained. On the sides, it's 9/9. Those will be retained as well. So the last issue, and this is one that I have to admit, did keep me up a little bit at night because I did struggle with this a little bit. From the very outset of this project, there had been a desire to remove 2 of the historic masonry walls from this building. So on the left is the existing floor plan. And as we've mentioned in the past, this house was built, at least the historic portions of this house, was built in 2 phases. You had the 1840 main house, and then 5 years later, probably when they were a little more settled in, had a little more money available, they built what I assume was a kitchen wing at the time. So that was in 1845, they added this structure. Then over time, they built out these more modern sections to give the profile of what's there currently. With what they're trying to achieve with the interior design, it didn't really afford for the retaining these 2 masonry walls. So they've agreed to maintain all of the 1840s masonry, all of the exposed masonry from the rear wing addition that is visible from the outside. They will maintain, but despite my comments, there's been a reluctance to remove or to keep these walls. Just so happens, as I said earlier, that they wanted to go for this large sort of open feel and have an interior where you have a clean transition from the kitchen area over to the living areas. So the reason this sort of gave me pause for so long was because one of the sort of main principles of conservation that we talk about is reversibility. And when somebody's making a change to a building, we really want to do our best to ensure that if someone down the road doesn't like that change, they can turn it back to what it once was. So we look for additions and renovations that are reversible. This is in no means reversible. This is the exact opposite. Once it's done, it's done. And what's been proposed here is that these walls be removed, and then much of the stone would actually be repurposed into these indoor-outdoor chimneys at the back of the house. So I mean, that from the beginning was a real asset in my mind in terms of, okay, if we do lose these walls, at least that material is being retained and will be put to good use on the property. But I still struggled a little bit with the thought of losing these walls, because as I said, once they're gone, there's no going back. I think part of the issue I had with that is that right now, there is an exposed section of this rear wall, and it has this really cool feature, this 1845 sort of imprint on it for the year that rear addition was built. So, you know, it's hard to see an element like that disappearing. Then I started thinking more about it, and I realized, well, this would not be visible anyways. The nature of the addition, they're building off of the back. This will all be enclosed. This will all be under a roof. I did have the owner send out some images of you know, what it looks like from the inside. These are the walls that will be removed. In my eyes, as a guy who loves heritage buildings, I see this being removed and I think, that's crazy. How could anybody do that? You know, I would do anything for a beautiful wall like this in my house. But then it led me to think, well, this is in a house. This exists now. No one gets to appreciate it other than the family. So what value does it really have to us or to the public at large to be retained? I want to keep it because structurally it's interesting. It kind of preserves the outline of the original building, but it's not part of the heritage designation. It's, as we mentioned, it's clearly an interior item, and we don't generally designate interior items on, you know, homes that are lived in, so residential properties. And as I started looking at it from that perspective, I could start to live with the idea of it disappearing. I think the fact that all of the external walls and all the visible walls are being maintained, and the fact that this material will actually be repurposed. So that was the north wall looking south. And this here is, I guess it would be the west wall looking east. So the fact that this material will actually be repurposed is a nice little tribute to it as well. And in the end, you know, I came around to the fact, if it can't be appreciated by the public, it can't be appreciated by us. It's not something that necessarily, you know, we have the right to fight for, and it's just more of a sort of personal preference thing. So with that, I want to open this up to a discussion about any concerns that that might remain with the committee based on the information that I've provided today. If there are none, then the next step would be for me to issue the heritage permit. Once they've received the heritage permit, they can go on ahead and apply for a building permit. And from there, it sounds like, you know, if at all possible, based on the timelines, they'd like to begin construction in this fall, but it is far more likely that they'll actually be holding off until spring of next year to get started on this project. So with that said, we'll open it up for a discussion. Anybody have any concerns or any issues they want to discuss? Pam?
Pam?
You're on mute,
Pam.
I'm just wondering if the stone with the 1845, I might have missed it if you'd said something about it, if it is going to be relocated to an appropriate location on one of the exterior walls.
It will be, yes. So that is a feature that they are very fond of, and they're going to make it a central element on, I believe, the outdoor fireplace.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other issues, then we'll move along. And as I said, what I'll be doing is I'll be providing the heritage permit to the applicants. That will be broken down to very clearly list everything that we have approved, including all of the sort of minor details. So for example, when we talk about the window replacements, we will say these are going to be wood double hung windows with the muntins on the exterior of the window. You know, every little detail we're going to try to preserve through that heritage permit, so that if anything does go wrong, we can say, look, this is the permit that was issued and this is the work that has been approved. All right. So the second item that I have is an update on the Elizabeth Street Cemetery. So again, a property we're all familiar with at the very western edge of the Pickering Village Heritage Conservation District. It also happens to be designated as a Part 4, Section 29 designation. You know, over the past, we've talked about all of our different options here, and then this was something presented to senior staff at the town in terms of how do we move forward with the issues that we're experiencing there. And the decision was made that we should issue a bylaw order sort of demanding or requiring the owners of this property to remedy the existing issues on site. So bylaw actually delivered that notice back on December 10th. And it's a notice based on the property standards bylaw saying that, you know, this is a designated heritage property. And as a heritage property, the heritage attributes have to be maintained to a certain quality. These monuments are considered attributes of this property, and they are not being maintained to the quality or the standards that they should be. So under the property standards bylaw, you are hereby ordered to make certain repairs. And we'll use this opportunity tonight to go through exactly what those repairs were. The order required that the work be completed by July 1st, 2021, so less than a month away. And we also made it very clear that we would do whatever we could to support this project. So this property is owned by the United Church of Canada. In this case, it's really stewarded by both the Pickering Village United Church, but the town plays a large role in the maintenance of this property as well. So what we offered is that through the Pickering Village Community Improvement Program, we could provide up to 50% of the funding for this project to a max of $15,000. We did not hear anything back from the church for about 5 or 6 months. And it wasn't until about halfway through last month that we heard from a church trustee that said, okay, we're aware of these issues. We want to know exactly what's required. And they actually, at that point, asked for an extension, which bylaw denied. And bylaw denied it for good reason, not to say that we aren't open to a longer timeline for this, because we are. But bylaw has a lot of experience with this kind of thing. And what they've learned in the past is that when somebody asks for an extension right away, you don't provide it to them. You say, we're willing to give you an extension as long as you can demonstrate that you have a contractor in place, that you have a scope of work all planned out. Once we see that evidence, we'll know that you truly are taking the steps required, and we can then discuss an extension. So I think that's quite a wise move on their behalf. But like I said, I thought, you know, we've talked about this property at length in the past, kind of, you know, focused in on some of the issues, but we've never actually drilled down to what exactly we are asking the owner to do. So I figured this was good opportunity, given that the work will be happening very soon. So with the order, this is something I put together, which was a key map of all of the issues that we're looking to have corrected. So it's 16 different repairs, and I'll go through those. It'll be quite quick, but I'll go through those one by one. So A is sort of bringing back this tablet here. We have this broken tablet. All of the pieces, it seems, are sitting at the base. So there is an opportunity to reassemble this, make it legible again. So a very sort of straightforward first project. This is a reoccurring theme that you're going to see. This is probably, 3/4, if not more, of the types of repairs that need to be done. There are a number of leaning monuments in the cemetery, and while it may not present any issues at this very moment, it's only a matter of time before gravity takes hold and this thing comes down like a couple others have. So we're requiring that they put together a new base and reposition the monument. Again, this one here is somewhat interesting because just sort of looking at it, it's very difficult to tell how off kilter this base is compared to the monument itself. Because if you look at the outline of the bottom of the monument, you can actually see that it's not at all centered on this base. And because you have these rounded edges, this could just be a situation where, once it's repositioned and it's centered on that base, it's more upright, and that could correct the issue. I doubt that will correct the issue. I think there still will be a bit of a tilt. And if there is, then this is another one that we would look to have a new base created for. Again, a sunken base on this one. This one's another one that's sunken, which is, given the height and I would imagine the expense of this monument, we wouldn't want to see it get to a state where, it comes down, because then that would be a major repair at a great expense. So we might as well get ahead of that with a new foundation. There are also several sort of plaque style burials or tablet style burial monuments that have been laid flat on the ground. And over time, they've become covered with dirt and grasses begin to grow over them. I've spoken with operations in the past about ensuring that these are cleared where possible. But now that we're sort of pushing back on the owner to make these repairs, this is also a good time to get those all cleared up. And then we'll ensure that moving forward, operations keeps an eye on that to avoid this, this problem occurring to this extent in the future. This is one of two fallen monuments that obviously need a new concrete or a new foundation. In the case where there are a couple that are very, very close to the ravine edge, so we're going to request or say that it is possible, if it's sort of determined that it's necessary, to reposition these about a meter inwards from where they are now, just so we don't run any risk of these going over the edge anytime soon. We have had an assessment from TRCA that said the slope is stable, so there's no sort of dire concern there in terms of anything crazy happening. But any slope is going to be subjected to erosion over time. So moving this just a little bit is going to ensure that it's safer for the long term. Another leaning monument. Another broken one here, which we're unsure if this is the result of vandalism or just gravity again taking its toll with a leaning monument. Nonetheless, this is another one that can be moved in approximately 1 meter. And I should mention, the reason we don't want to move them more than that is it's likely that these are actually marking burials. So there have been a lot of tablets and a lot of monuments moved to that sort of central monument in the park. That's sort of a last case scenario. If we have a loose monument that has been moved around, then okay, they make sense to move that thing to a central position. But if this is truly marking a burial, then it should continue to do that in the future. There are a few stones in the same area of that last one that are very difficult to even get a sense of what they are. So through this effort, this is a good opportunity to clear from around them, figure out if we can determine what they relate to, any burials they might relate to. If those burials are in this exact location, these should remain in situ. If it's determined that they can't be connected with any burials, they can be relocated to a central position in the cemetery. This is another leaning monument, luckily leaning the right direction, I guess, so that's something. Another larger leaning one here. Another leaning one, another leaning one. This is an interesting one because you have one fairly secure monument, but you also have a number of these tablets which have been leaned up against it. So the direction that we've provided here is if those tablets are all related to one burial plot, so let's say they're all related to the same family, for example, it makes sense to create some sort of permanent holding for these in that position of that monument. If these have just been leaned there because there's been nowhere more appropriate to put them, then again, we could consider them being moved to a more central location. These ones here have been leaning against the tree for as long as I've been around with the town. So coming on to, or over 6 years now, or coming up on 6 years, I should say. So these ones should actually be positioned somewhere more permanently. Now, as the last part of this presentation, I wanted to show a quick YouTube video because back in 2018, without any knowledge of what we had going on at the Elizabeth Street Cemetery, I was approached by some individuals who had come up with a new product called MonuGrid, and they were marketing this. It has multiple purposes. They have a version that's for large-scale construction projects. They have a sort of domestic version for people doing hot tub installations and that sort of thing. But they also have this very sort of niche product for monuments and cemeteries. And what it does is it allows for a solid base for a cemetery monument without going through the expense or some of the issues that can come about from actually pouring a full concrete foundation. So I'm just going to stop my share here and then try to reshare a YouTube screen here, and we can watch that video, which is only about, it's less than 5 minutes long. Okay, can everyone see this? Yep.
No problem.
So as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward project. And in terms of expense and the sort of expertise that's required to use it as a solution, pretty straightforward. And it's a somewhat novel concept in the sense of, I think we've relied on concrete for so long. I had never even considered a product like this, but some of the videos they have giant dump trucks driving over this stuff, and it seems to be very, very sturdy and steady. And there's a monument restoration company, I believe out of Port Hope or somewhere just east of here, that's been using it now for a few years and really raves about it. So by no means are we requiring that the owners of the cemetery use this product. However, we have forwarded the information along to them, so it is something that they can consider. So any questions from anyone on that one?
Go ahead, Camille, and then we'll go to Pam.
Oh, hi, Mike. Just
Hello.
curious, are there any relatives of the that need to be updated on the undertakings that will happen? Sorry, is it the town's responsibility or is it the owners?
Sorry, so I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking.
We're doing the renovation of the cemetery, if I can call it that. Is there any relatives of the people who are laid there that will be updated on what's happening? Or is it just something that goes without notice?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is something that would happen without notice, because it's not something like, occasionally you will hear of these large products, and it's usually major urban areas like Toronto or Montreal where they actually have to relocate a cemetery. So it becomes the responsibility for the people doing that work of any of the people being exhumed. They have to make best efforts to track down any living relatives to sort of provide them with that information. In this case, we're not doing anything, anything much below a couple inches below the surface. So really what we're trying to here is just to correct some of the issues that have happened over time, and there wouldn't really be a need to inform any of the relatives. It is an interesting question though, because this hasn't been an active cemetery for some time in terms of new burials, yet you do occasionally see, and I think on one of the photos you may have noticed as well, small flowers put beside some of the markers. So there are people out there that are aware of loved ones and ancestors in this cemetery that do still come out to pay their regards, I guess.
I have several questions. One is, does the church have a layout or plan of the plots that are in that cemetery? Is there one that exists? Because you made reference several times to determine if these stones are related to or close to. So I'm wondering if they do have some idea.
From what I've heard, I don't think they have much. They may have something, but I don't believe that they have anything, in terms of a comprehensive listing of all of the burials there and all of the monuments related to those. I think if they had, you might have seen a different approach with the large monument that was probably constructed back in the 70s or 80s at the center of the cemetery. I think there might have been more of an effort to try to keep those each of those tablets sort of in situ where it belonged. The reality is with these cemeteries, oftentimes going back to, I think this one goes back to the 1830s. That's a very, very long time, nearly 200 years to keep paper copies. So it's very rare to actually, unless it's a major, major organization, it's very rare to see those preserved. And even when there have been great efforts at preserving them over time, things like fires in historic buildings and that sort of thing have, I'd say in more cases than not, removed these entirely. So I guess the quick answer is they may have something, but I don't think they have anything comprehensive.
Sometimes those are things that they find in family Bibles, etc. I know that Peak Green Law, they had the plan in the family Bible. I guess my other question is more about the limestone tablet stones. You showed some that were leaning up against a tree, you know, some that are just kind of around. Are they going to be, there is a method of re-erecting them, especially the ones that are partially buried or are buried, and there are quite a few, I believe, in the cemetery that are fully under the grass. They're going to be brought back up and re-erected. Because, you know, the central one that you showed, I haven't been over there for a long time to see what kind of shape they're in, but it really is, it's not particularly healthy for those tablets to be mounted in a concrete central thing like that, almost horizontal. The rain and the ice and everything else just totally deteriorates them. And I know that there was a standard in one of the heritage cemeteries in Gananoque on how they were bring those back up. They were putting them in a gravel bed so that there would be no water accumulation. So, long question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to be considered. And because I myself am definitely not an expert in terms of you know, the stabilization of these stones, what we've done with the order is we've told them what needs to be repaired. We haven't told them how to repair it. So the idea is that they will bring on a contractor that does work like this. So somebody that has worked with historic cemeteries in the past, and once they have that scope of work laid out, they will require a heritage permit.
Okay.
So if they come forward and they say, yeah, we're just gonna, you know, stick them with a lime on the ground, pour a bunch of concrete around it. Well, as you said, that's not
Horrible.
a good thing. That's going to expedite the sort of decay of these things from rain and erosion, as you said. But also when you lay something that's typically a softer stone in a very hard concrete, even the expansion over time is going to probably crack the tablets and do all kinds of things that won't be good. So we'll be reliant on that contractor to lay out very clearly what's being planned. And if there is anything that we don't think is appropriate, we have the opportunity to say so and prevent through the heritage permit.
I think if I remember correctly in the Gananoque project, that even putting the limestone stones in a limestone base created a chemical reaction that was not desirable as well, because it accelerated the decay of the stone. So, okay, that was my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see Stephen's got a question. Go ahead, Stephen.
That property to the south of the cemetery, where they've been storing all that tree garbage, is that going to be cleared up? Is that part of the scope too?
So that's something that that we've been trying to address with the operations team out there. So you may know more than I do about where that yard waste is coming from, but we've ensured that when operations creates waste on that site, in terms of, you know, whether it's grass clippings or you know, any pruned branches and things like that, that they aren't just being tossed over the ravine edge. Because that actually that can really expedite the destabilization of the edge of the slope. It sort of covers and suffocates any of the ground cover there, and then you don't have the root system to hold up the soil, and it all starts to wash away with these storms. So we're trying to address that stuff through management, through operations. But I mean, if you're aware of situations where it's neighbors kind of dumping there, then we might have to be a little more active. And I think we might have talked in the past as well about actually, if it comes down to it, having to put up signage, just reminding people, you know, not to dump yard waste there.
Yeah.
And at that point, it becomes a little bit of a balancing act, because we don't want people to do this. We also have a beautiful pastoral, historic sort of landscape, and when you start throwing up signs everywhere, that can really detract from that. So we'll have to figure that one out.
Okay.
I believe Jeff had his hand up next. Go ahead, Jeff.
Fancy talking about signage. From a communications point of view, would the town publicize these good works by posting a sign at the site saying this site to be rejuvenated? Here's a phone number to see what the plan is.
So I don't think we'd go so far as physical signage. And part of the reasoning for that is the expense, number one. With any of our public projects now, or any of our even private planning projects, we get a project page set up on what's called IMO. So
Yep.
There's a section of our website that details all these projects, provides background information, and then provides a sort of conduit for people to ask questions and that sort of thing. So we could publicize it that way and probably get things out on our social media channels as well.
Yeah.
But as far as physical signage, I can't see us going that way.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I think Beverly had a question next, so go ahead, Beverly.
Yeah, it's going back to Pam's suggestion about a map or a breakdown of who is buried in that cemetery. When Elizabeth Street was on, I think it was the first or second doors open, I thought Brenda came up with something from the archives that had a map or names or somebody of what was in there. But you can also suggest that the church, if it's necessary that they'd have to have a map or a list of names, have them contact the, what is it, Durham Region Genealogical? Yeah, they might have, because I know they had a breakdown of who was in there and did their own study, but that was based on the tablets that were there. But they might know, ones that have disappeared that are under the grass and things, they might know a little bit more. I don't think we should do all their work, the church work for them, but.
Yeah, I think, so what I can do as a first step is I will reach out to the church to confirm, as I said, as a first step, what they have and what they may be missing. And once we have a better handle of that, then I think we may start doing some digging. And we could, I know, as you said, it's not our project to do, but could be very interesting for, a few of the committee members to see what we can come up with through the archives, through contacting any local genealogical societies. And yeah, I think that could be a very worthwhile project to sort of help them out with.
Well, I was the one that was the volunteer at the cemetery for Doors Open. And through the summer, I had gone out there, collected names, and then I did research with the old Pickering Post and the old news, whatever I guess it was the Guardian before the News Advertiser. And I left with Brenda after the Doors Open, a booklet I created that had the picture of the cemetery, the picture of the tablet, and the obituary of the person I found in that newspaper. So that might, encourage somebody to, not that I'm patting myself on the back or anything, but it might encourage somebody, well, maybe this is important that we, take a look at this. And some of the people in there were actually quite interesting, their lives that were in there, but, because I think the Lintons were in there. There's a couple of other big name village people that were in there. One of them was, I can't remember if he was a horse thief or whether he was run over by a horse while he was on his bicycle going through the middle of Pickering Village. So they got quite interesting. And I know Brenda had a collection of stuff for the cemetery. So you might check into.
Yeah, I'll look into that as well. I'll see what we can come up with through the town. And luckily, Brenda left me her personal email. I told her I would do my best not to contact her for questions like this. So she'll be really surprised when it hasn't even been a week and I'm reaching out to her for direction on something. But hopefully that's not going to continue for too long.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, just think of all of the stones that are under the grass, which once they are uncovered, there are more stories to be had there. The other thing I wanted to ask is, do we know what the denomination was of that cemetery originally?
it was a Mennonite, wasn't it? Or not Mennonite,
it?
but,
Methodist?
Methodist, yeah.
I believe it was
Daily
Methodist.
United Church, yeah.
Yeah, there was actually a church there, a very early church.
Because sometimes the church, the denomination would have records of their cemeteries.
Right. Yep. So that's another lead.
I know that probably the last burial was one that they found, I think it's when they were building the subdivision. There were remains found outside the property, and they were interred somewhere in there. I don't think it's marked or anything. I just know that was in there, and that was, I couldn't remember when to say, but I would say it's in my lifetime anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was a bit of a surprise to whoever had issued the approvals for the location of that subdivision, and it goes to show you never really can trust the boundaries of a historic cemetery. And I've heard some really interesting stories about. I think one was out near Halifax. I was at an old cemetery there, and I was hearing about how the families, like, it was a very, very nice cemetery, and big long history to it, but some of the families that weren't so well off couldn't afford to have any proper burials in the cemetery. So what they would do is bring any sort of remains during the middle of the night and kind of create their own plots on the outside of the cemetery. And that's apparently something that's very, very common. It wasn't just that cemetery. So yeah, you can always get into a bit of a tricky situation. And that's why I think we need to be so careful with 310 Kingston, that big tower development that's going there right south of the Hicksite Brown Cemetery. There it's a bit of a different scenario because you have like a bit of a gully, so it's more of a natural border that it would be very rare for burials to be on the other side of that gully, but you can never be too careful with those sorts of things.
Michael, do you
Yes.
remember when we were up in Godrich and we took the bus tour? I forget the name of the little town with the nice clock there, but they took us and showed us the little cemetery they had, the way they had it laid out with like black granite where they had the stones just placed in it, a walkway through it, sort of thing.
Yeah, like there's all sorts of good examples. This is the great thing when it comes to historic cemeteries, is there's no shortage of examples on, interesting concepts for sort of recreating some of these landscapes, but also to determine how you can go about some of these projects with success. I mean, these monuments have been leaning for years and years, and it's something that every cemetery deals with. So that's where we need to, I think, really rely on the people that have done this work in the past and their expertise. But yeah, there's absolutely good examples for us to look at all around the province.
I just got handed some information here. It's a website called findagrave.com cemeteries, and it's got the Elizabeth Street Pioneer Cemetery Memorial in it. It's got
Okay.
a bunch of names and other people.
All right. Yeah. So another source there.
That was my wife watching the meeting on her tablet.
Okay.
So I think Neil had a
Do
question
we-
there.
Oh, sorry, Neil, go ahead.
Sorry, guys. Just want to amplify what Stephen said about the foliage and the undergrowth, that backdrop. Because if the church does all that work to get those monuments straightened up, to have that current backdrop in the mess it has been. I haven't been there recently to see what it's like, but that would be a bad move, and really the town's got to move on that. And if we need a volunteer group to help out, I'm more than willing to help out on that one.
Okay. Thank you, Neil.
Any further questions for Mike? Okay. If not, so we'll actually, it's not really on the agenda, but we'll just move it into this section, the Heritage Minute video project update. So I will turn over to Pam now to discuss that part.
Well, oh, you've got the text up. Okay. So basically what we had discussed was the Old Post Inn being the next building to feature for our Heritage Minute. And this is the text, and I'm not sharing screen because I don't know how. So this times out to be about 2 minutes when I read it. I don't know if you did, if you read it, Neil, and if it was, or Jeff, if it was any different, about 2 minutes. And 2 minutes. Okay. All right. So I'll let you read it. And if there's any questions, etc., really what I'm trying to go for is the importance within the town, and something about the architecture, and something about this is a very superior building in terms of construction. So something about the style, something about the history, something about the architecture, and I'll let you read it. You don't want me reading it to you, do you? Sarah, can you move it down a little? Yeah, thanks. Okay.
The last sentence is missing a word. Be sure to visit.
Okay. No, after. I did find reference that the building could have been 1821, but most references show 1815. The other question I have is, I'm not positive, but the original bake oven, folding partitions I know are still there, and I'm assuming the dining cabinet is still there, that they all survived renovation, but that would be something I'd like to check on. And if there's a possibility of getting inside that building to take some pictures. It did at one time have the original box lock right on the back of the door.
I like the bit at the end that talks about muddy path and everything, and that's good. Good ending.
Okay, good.
I guess,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Go ahead.
Looking at the script, our minutes have form and structure. They have a beginning, a middle, and the end, and there's common elements that run through each video, how we introduce it, how we finish it. So I'd like to compliment Pam right now, saying you've got the formula knocked out. This one will be probably the most detailed one ever, but it it stands hand in hand with the previous two efforts. And by the way, I'll get a copy to everybody of our most recent St. Francis Center video. Anyway, it's the videos are following true to form. They're not wildly different, which is kind of what we're after. So I just like to throw that out.
Thanks, Jeff. You know, there is so much information to include, but
Yes.
really they are to, the purpose really is to just initiate some interest and hopefully traveling on Highway 2 and seeing that building and saying, oh yes, I remember seeing that before, you know, but there's an awful lot of information. But the architecture, I think, is another piece that I'm hoping we can get some good pictures of some of those elements of the architecture to include. So is there anybody, does anybody have any concerns? Stephen, I put in the super center for you. And I know I didn't put the full name in, but
Not super center, just superstore.
Super store.
Superstore.
Okay. Thank you. And anybody else have any concerns or?
Looks good.
Okay.
Okay. So there's no further questions for Pam or Jeff on that one. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is correspondence. Was there any correspondence to the committee, Sarah?
No, Mr. Chair, there wasn't.
All right, sounds good. So we'll go on to item 6, which is update from council, which will turn to Councillor Khan to share anything that is new and exciting with council in Ajax.
Good evening, everyone, once again. Lots of good news. As of last weekend, over 75,000 residents in Ajax have been vaccinated, which is about 69% of Ajax, their first dose.
Wow.
So I guess who got it earlier will be getting their second doses soon enough. So that's a great achievement for us. I finally got mine on Sunday, and I got no side effects. So I got a little bit of pain, but that was about it. So on September 9th, I think I'm due for my second, but with the amount of vaccines that are coming in, there's a good possibility whoever wants is going to get it sooner. That's for vaccines. Ajax Council have been doing something called the anti-bias training to teach us to deal with all the different denominations that we have living in our town. One thing I did learn, and I just want to share that, is that everybody is a bit biased. So instead of denying it, they've asked you to acknowledge your bias and work towards building on it, like erasing it, not building your bias. So I've been working on that. It's been a lot easier when you actually accept that you have challenges in your head. So we've been working very hard to make sure we accommodate everybody in our town. It's a third thing I want to bring to notice is it's summertime, so all the race cars are coming out again. So you'll be hearing all the loud mufflers and you'll be noticing all the speeding. We've been working with the Durham Regional Police Service, and we're deploying them in the areas. There's only so many speed bumps we can put up. There's only so many stop signs you can put out. You know that speed bumps is something that slows down emergency vehicles, which is very, very important. We can't be putting speed bumps all over the place. We need community involvement, and there's hotlines we can call with numbers. There is no way to measure the noise of these race cars, these souped up cars, but our police are now equipped, some of them with a decoder that they can stop a car and they can plug it into their computer, like portable, and it will tell you if they've bypassed the catalyst converter, which is an emission control, and your cars can be seized, your driver's license can be seized. So these are things that we have put forward in Ajax. So that's a good thing. So it's been continuous, and residents complain and they're mad at us all the time, of course, but it's community, right? How much can we educate people, and if they don't care? And so we have to engage the Durham Regional Police Service, who have been very, very cooperative. Third thing, sad news that we know about the 215 children whose bodies were recently recovered in Kamloops in BC, and our town has lowered our flags immediately. We've lowered our flags at half-mast, and we're trying to do something, right? So we took leadership in this again. We are asking our residents to donate like slightly used shoes for children. And we're gonna put it in the Heritage Square on Monday. We're gonna have a virtual, so go online on the Ajax site, and online you at 2:15 p.m. for the 215 children. We're gonna do a virtual something. We're gonna do a virtual meeting at Heritage Square at 2:15 p.m. on Monday, June 7th. So it would be nice if we can join. And everybody's asked to wear orange because orange was the color they used at that school. And if anybody has any gently used shoes for children, I think the town hall is accepting it. So we can give these at the end of this. We're going to give them to groups, homes that are taking care of families and children. So those are some of the initiatives that we're doing at the town, and we hope you guys are pleased. And whatever, I know you're always full of great ideas. We're always open to hear. We're all still learning, and we want to please our residents. So please help us do that. Anyways, that's my long drawn out report, but I'm happy to share this news with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilor Khan. Anyone have questions for Councilor Khan at all, or we good? All right, flying along to number 7, which is other business. Does anyone have any other business they wanted to share with the committee today? Yes, Stephen.
I've taken on a little project of my own for Heritage. I've been out throughout the neighborhood checking the small monuments put out by the town for street dedications, along with trees when families have come over and rededicated the street. So plus I'm doing all the major signs. I'm trying to get a picture and a location for everything. And as it happens, Sunday I was out and stopped by the Westney House, one of my favorite places. And the Heritage plaque is back up. I was taking a picture and the owner of the house came out and we had a conversation for 45 minutes. But I was just wondering, Michael, if we have any pictures of the original house on file, because she said she'd like to set up get a picture frame and put some of the pictures from the original house in it, so she put it on the wall. And the funny part of it was, she's a financial advisor, very nice lady, and the architect Wayne is her client.
So we definitely have at least one historic image, and it's one that we've included in all of our presentations. I think it has the family outside of the building, I believe in the 1880s or 1890s. 1893 is coming to mind, so it might be around that time. I can, do you have a means to provide the, like an email copy of the photo to the owner?
Yeah, if you just send it to me and I can print it off. Yes, no
Okay.
problem.
I'll do that.
But that was my little story.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen. Anything from anyone else? I guess not. So we're going to go on to number 8, which is adjournment. So this concludes our meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Pam. A seconder? Beverly, all in favor? Very well, motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. Our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, September 8th. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're standing down for the summer, and we're not going to be meeting as a committee unless something comes up that requires us to be here. So September 8th, 2021. And at this time, that meeting is still scheduled to be an electronic meeting.
That's when I was getting to know you guys. Now I'm gonna forget we're gonna forget each other again. So gotta start all over again in September. No, I won't. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good job, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Enjoy your summer. I'll take
Have
care
a-
of those speeding cars. Don't worry.
Have a